Thank you.
Hello, I'm Tim. I'm alcoholic from Nashville. And our speaker tonight is one of the, I have to put this delicately. Let's see, I met Sheldon about 6 or 7 years ago, and I've seen him at men's retreats, and that's where I first saw him. He was at one of our men's retreats, and he spoke, and he has a combination of putting humor and self-deprecation, compiles it with compassion and candor. And his honesty is kind of disarming because it really made me feel a lot more comfortable with being able to speak about my own issues. And he does it with a humor and compassion at the same time. And it's unique sometimes. So Sheldon, I'm proud to know you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sheldon Fady. I'm an alcoholic. It's an honor to come and hang out with you guys. I am in my car. As Dawn said, my home group starts at 9 o'clock Central or 7 o'clock Vegas time. And I'm going to hang out with you guys for as long as I can. And then I'm going to go to my home group. So I apologize if it's kind of gloomy, although some people would say that the less of me you see, the more you'll be able to enjoy the meeting. So I don't know what they mean by that, but I've heard that said before. So, that's funny. I got to tell you, I'd never read the letter until Sam asked me to come and join you guys, and so I read it a couple of times over the last week, and I really enjoyed Bill's insight. I just got to say this just because it bugged me since I read it. There's an implication in there that Bill says it's okay to sleep with your sponsees. I'm not really sure what he meant by that. We don't have to discuss it, but just it is there. So if you ever have really bad behavior and you need Bill to co-sign your bullshit, you could take that letter to your sponsor and say, it's right here in the grapevine. It's 50, 60 years old and whatever. So I just wanted to lay that out there for the sicker ones amongst you, understanding I was sick enough to pick up on it right away, first read. So anyway, just to lay that out there. I'm always tempted at a talk like this to come from a place of, I know you're suffering with spiritual and emotional immaturity. I have outgrown that now, but I am going to share with you from my past the journey that I took in hopes of taking you by the hand and leading you through the trenches. I am a used car salesman by trade and still not a good enough liar to pull that off, right? I have suffered through my sobriety from actions that I have taken several times, many times. But I also don't want this to be a talk where it sounds like I have stayed sober in spite of all the pain, right? And that it's been this journey of tears, which would be disingenuous, and it would shed AA in a terrible light. I've had a blast being sober. I've had some amazing things happen, some great love, some great growth. I have made some mistakes, and I've enjoyed some of those, if the truth be told. So I don't want anyone to think that I'm coming to you guys as if somehow I've reached some level of emotional sobriety that warrants me giving a talk on it. Nor do I want you to come away from this talk thinking, oh, that poor guy, oh, how he suffered. But we are going to talk about the low spots, right? That's what we're going to discuss today. But it is not the majority of my sobriety. The majority of my sobriety has been a wonderful journey with friends and love and laughter and just, you know, the whole gambit, as you guys have also experienced and as you also know. I think that the first time that I had any recognition of my own real emotional immaturity. I wasn't sober very long at all. Maybe a year or maybe 2 years sober. I'd already gone through the steps. I went through the steps very quickly. I was sponsored by a guy for my first 20 years of my sobriety that, big book steps, big book steps, big book steps. And so the first after 30 days of being sober, he had me writing my 4th step. I shared my first 5th step and my 5th step with him. I was less than 60 days sober and real active in 9-step and 12-step stuff. But I start to feel sicker. I start to feel more angst. You guys promise in the meetings that if you do this stuff, you'll start to feel better. And then they make that joke, right? Oh yeah, you'll feel better. You'll feel depression better and you'll feel worry better, right? But the idea of me doing all this activity is that I'm supposed to be having a better time of life. And in about a year or two sober, I went to my sponsor saying, this isn't working. This isn't working. He said, what do you mean? And I explained to him how I felt more alone. I felt more dishonest. I felt more insecure. I felt more judgment. I could see myself taking a position of judgment on everyone at work and in the meetings and in my life. And it was all these things that I was trying to escape, all these things, these character defects that we discovered in step 5 were coming back to haunt me. And he said something that really struck me. He said, first of all, Sheldon, I've been watching you. We've been very close proximity these last year and a half. And I can tell you that your behavior has improved, that you are a long way from being the man you will become in AA. But you are better. You are a better guy. You're a nicer person. We enjoy hanging out with you more. He said, perhaps what's happening to you is that as you get more sober, you get more honest and more aware of the things about you that have always existed, and in some cases to a greater degree, but you were blind to them when you were new. You were so selfish, so obsessed, so locked into you and what the world was doing to you and how you felt that you weren't aware of any of your fallibilities. And as you do this journey in Alcoholics Anonymous and you start to become more self-aware and the mask falls off and the blockage comes away from your eyes and you become more self-aware, that you can see things about you couldn't see before and they bother you. And I believe that there was and remains truth to that. It's a funny thing in AA. We almost get embarrassed in meetings to share about the gifts and the joy, right? We don't want to share about how good we feel and how amazing life is because we don't want people to think we're bragging, or we don't want people to take an opinion of us. So it's much easier to talk about how flawed we are and how we still do things wrong. You can go to some meetings, and I don't know if you've ever been to a meeting like this, but you can go to some meetings where people are saying things like, well, I did this today, but what do you expect? I'm an alcoholic, or I'm sober 25 years. My sobriety, by the way, is July 1796. I don't know if I mentioned that. Sober 25 years and I still behave horribly, but what do you expect? I'm an alcoholic. As if AA doesn't work, right? As if you show up here a piece of garbage, you don't drink, but you remain a piece of garbage. And if that was the truth, I wouldn't want to keep hanging out here, right? AA works. I'm not perfect, but my goodness, there is a massive gap between who I was when I got here and who I am today. We focus so much on self-awareness. We inventory, don't we? Like nobody. Some of us inventory more than me. I'm not. A friend of mine refers to some people as scribblers, right? They go to the restroom and then they inventory their bowel movement because they have to write about everything constantly all the time. And we have to be careful. The book says that we're careful not to drift into morbid worry or depression. I have a friend of mine who some of you guys know, Bill C., who says that self-awareness without a sense of humor is depression. And one of the great gifts, I think, one of the ways that I can judge at any particular moment my emotional sobriety. When things go wrong and I get upset, do I remain upset and dig in and get mad? Or do I think I'm funny with how I reacted to things? Can I grab one of my buddies and go, man, I did it again. I'm still doing it. I'm still that guy. Can I get a sense of humor or a sense of okayness with who I am as a person in this journey that I'm taking? And my hope for myself is that I can always maintain that level of acceptance that I will never achieve perfection. Some of you have heard me say this before. I can break my sobriety down into almost to the number 10-year periods, but give or take. You know, in the first of all, the first couple of years of sobriety, in the first couple of years, if you're not making yourself a Captain AA, right, where you are flying around the meetings being perfect and there's something wrong. You guys can't hear me? Oh my goodness, let me see. You can hear me now? Okay, good. It's so in the first couple of years of sobriety, I want to build this AA cape, right, where I become super AA guy. And I want to fly around the meetings being wonderful and perfect. And I spend almost 10 years really trying my hardest to be the perfect AA member, right? I'm not going to judge anybody. I'm going to love everybody. I'm never going to be dishonest. I'm going to be kind to everyone. I'm going to have love and tolerance. I've got these character defects, and I'm going to work really hard to eliminate all of them. And gosh darn it, I am going to be super AA, which hurts. If you've ever tried that, it really hurts. So the first 10 years of my sobriety, I'm on this trip. The next 10 years of my sobriety, I am properly ashamed of myself for not being perfect, right? And that's where things like, well, I'm doing the best I can. I mean, I'm like the Eeyore of AA. What do you expect? I'm just an alcoholic, right? And I'm like, if we were a Catholic organization, I'm not Catholic. I'm Jewish by birth, but if we were a Catholic organization, we'd beat ourselves with whips and we'd tighten sharp, pointy things around our legs so we could remember how pathetic we are because we couldn't live up to the dreams of the first 10 years. And these last 5 or 6 years, I've started to get a sense of humor of how silly I am. That joining the human race for me has not been a journey of becoming good enough to join you. It's become a journey of being the same as you, that it's okay that I'm flawed and it's okay that you're flawed. That the problem in my life in early sobriety and beforehand was when Wilson talks about this dependence on other people and situations. What I would do is I would be mad at myself, disappointed and disgusted because I couldn't live up to what I thought I was supposed to be, right? I couldn't live up to what I thought I was supposed to be. And I would beat myself with that. And then I would hate you because you weren't living up to who I thought you were supposed to be, but you weren't doing it because of inadequacy. I was the only inadequate one that couldn't live up to it. You were doing it by choice. You could and you should, and God damn it, I'm not going to love you till you do, but you're not. And this gap in my life of knowing you could do better and being ashamed that I can't, because we're all on this journey of perfection, just made me so alone. and so afraid and so insecure and so full of angst. This, when I was new, and I was always full of myself. I was always Mr. Ego. So when they said this phrase to me, it always felt like an insult. You know what your problem is, Sheldon? You need to be right sized. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that phrase. You need to be right sized. We're going to right size you in AA, which when you're saying that to a guy who is full of ego, right, it means we're going to bring you down a peg or two. But what you don't know about me, or maybe you do and you're letting me play the game, is that the ego is fake. And what I really feel is insecure and alone. What's that phrase we use? I'm an egomaniac with an insecurity complex, right? Inferiority complex. So what right-sized means is, yeah, we're going to knock off the fake ego, but we're going to pump up the insecurity. We're going to bring you to the middle. And in the middle, I get to live, where you're just a person that's trying to do the very best he can or she can. And you're failing sometimes, but not on purpose. You're failing because you're human, and you're broken somewhat, and you're not God. The author says in Spirituality of Imperfection that we are trapped between angel and beast. The beast afraid of the angel, and the angel disgusted by the beast, and we are neither. And that you are perfect, and that I am the same, and that we meet in this quagmire of humanity, this gray area in the middle, where we are sometimes able to pull off something that might look like perfection, and sometimes we fail miserably, and usually we're somewhere in the middle, and we're all the same. And this is where I joined the human race, was in the sameness as you. I've had some things happen in sobriety that have been earth-shakingly emotionally difficult. My wife and I, well, let me start off by saying my ex-wife and I, so I've had a divorce, and that was brought on by my own behavior. Maybe we'll have time to talk about that or not, I don't know, but my wife and I, we were pregnant 4 times. 4 times we saw heartbeats of babies. 4 times we were picking out furniture and names. We saw the beating heart in the doctor's office. We have 1 son. He's beautiful and he's magical and he's 20 and he's perfect. And if you ever get to meet him, you'll go, no way he came from Sheldon, right? He's a great kid. But 3 times we had to cry. 3 times we had to cry. I mentioned the divorce. My dad passed away in sobriety. And this is a man that I had a journey with, an up and down emotional roller coaster journey with. But we were great at the end, and I held his hand as he took his last breath. And that was difficult. Business problems. I have my own business, and I can't believe how good things have turned out, but I had bankruptcy attorney on a retainer for 18 months because it looked like I need him at any moment, and that was very difficult. Pandemic has been very, very hard for some of us, not for all of us, because some of us really enjoy the drama, don't we? Oh, it gives us an excuse. Oh, it's so difficult because of I think that when they figure out all of the different strains, there'll be Delta and Omicron, and then there'll be alcoholic COVID too. I think some of us get our own strain. Oh, I have the worst kind of COVID. It's alcoholic COVID, for God's sake. You have no idea. What are the symptoms? Selfishness, self-centeredness, and a runny nose. It's terrible, but but it's been a journey. I tell you, my dad. I'll share a little bit with you about my relationship with my dad. My dad left when I was 3 years old. We were never a religiously Jewish family, but culturally Jewish, and we're in a Jewish neighborhood in a small town in the north of England. I know I don't sound English. I've lived in America since I was 16 years old, but I was born into a small Jewish community, almost shtetl-like. I mean, it was very interwoven. When I was 3, my dad left, and we had to move out of that neighborhood. My dad, when he left, he quit paying the mortgage, and we became a welfare family. Section 8 housing. Mom did the best she could, but my life turned upside down. And Britain is different than America. Europe has a lot more anti-Semitism than America does, and there's a lot of fights and a lot of problems in that area. And I hated my childhood, and I hated my dad. And I hated my dad not only because of my childhood, but when he left, he didn't like just move out and then still raise us. You know what I mean? He moved out, and he moved across the country, and then eventually across the world, and ended up in America. And I felt abandoned by him. And then people had told me when my drinking started that if I had not come from a broken home, I probably wouldn't drink and do drugs so much. Like, they blamed my dad. And I like having someone to blame. So I agreed, and I blamed my dad too. And so now my dad is to blame for my childhood, for all the fights, for my feelings of abandonment, and my alcoholism. I mean, he's to blame for everything. And I hate my dad. You know. When I was 16 years old, my dad lived at the beach in California. And you can hate somebody, but it's hard to hate him enough to have them bring you out of the freezing cold, miserable north of England and have you live at the beach with palm trees. I mean, I didn't hate him that much, right? I was willing to go live in California, and I did. And our relationship was filled with ups and downs. I made amends to my dad very early in sobriety for what I could see had been the thing. And I couldn't really see what the thing was, but I made amends for the behavior from 16 to 28. I made amends for the lying and the stealing, because I lived in the same town as him for much of my drinking, and I made amends for that behavior. And we became friendly again, and eventually I'd moved to Vegas, he moved to Vegas, and it looked good. It was nice. And then he met a girl, and he moved back to England. My son was 2 years old at the time. Right about the same age I was when he left me as a kid. And my son loved him. And I wrote this story that wasn't true about how he had broken my heart, and now he broke my son's heart. That wasn't true. My son missed his grandpa, but he had a mom and a dad in the life, and it wasn't that big of a deal to my son. But I wrote this story, right? Because I was hurt and wounded about how this man had abandoned me when I was 3, and then he gets a relationship with his grandson, and he abandons him at 3, and there was money involved. He took a little bit of my money with him when he left. And, you hurt me, you hurt my wife, you hurt my son. That's one thing. You take my money, that's a whole nother story. And so I hate him. I hate him. I go to my sponsor, and I'm talking to my sponsor about this man who has hurt me so much for a second time. And I was not calm about it. I was almost yelling at my sponsor, like, this was his fault. This is your fault. If you would have just agreed with me, at this time, it was probably 10 or 12 years ago when I first did my inventory, the guy was a piece of shit, and you hadn't made me write an inventory, and you hadn't made me made amends, I wouldn't have let him back in my life. And I could have lived with that first level of anger and hate. But now you've pushed him back in my life. You've recreated the hope of a relationship with my father. And that son of a bitch did it again. And I think, quite honestly, you should give me the money he stole from me, because the whole goddamn thing is your fault. And, my sponsor kind of had the same reaction you did. He kind of laughed at me. This is what he said to me. And this, I think, is such an important part of us realizing this next frontier of emotional sobriety. This is what he said to me. He said, Sheldon, nobody could blame you if you hated your dad for the rest of your life. Nobody could blame you. You could tell this story to your friends till the day you die, and they'll agree with you as a piece of crap. And you can punish him by never talking to him again, and it'll hurt him. And you can punish him by never letting him see his grandson again, and that'll hurt him. You know, you can punish him with separation from the family, and it will hurt. But at the time, my dad was early 70s and he was sick. And he said, you can do all this. And then in 4 or 5 or 6 years, your dad's going to die. Here's the problem. You're going to live about another 30 years. And for 30 years, you are going to be left with the memory that your dad's a piece of crap. And anytime you smell something, hear something, read something, hear some music that reminds you of your dad, you're going to be reminded not only that your dad's a piece of crap, but that your dad didn't love you. Not only your dad didn't love you, but you're going to be reminded that his blood's in your veins. Not only are you part of your dad, you're just like your dad. You know that because of your experience with your dad. And you're going to spend the next 30 years punishing yourself because you wanted to hate your dad while he was still on earth. And you are going to suffer. But that's okay. If you want to do that, it's your decision. Your son, however, will live another 30 years. So your son will have 60 years of knowing all, because Sheldon, you will not keep it to yourself. You will share the poison with anyone that listens. As any of us do, some of you now have problems with family members, parents, kids, exes, someone in your life that you've just poisoned your friends in the last few days about what a piece of crap they are. And he knew that I would do that to my son. And so for 60 years, my son would not only know that his grandfather was garbage, his grandfather was no good, that his grandfather's blood was in his veins. He was probably just like his grandfather and he was going to suffer. He said, but one more thing. Do you think you'll ever disappoint your son? What kind of question is that? Right? I mean, if I've learned anything by this time, I'm 10, 12 years sober. If I've learned anything by this time, it's that I'm going to disappoint, guarantee, right? I don't know what level, but yes, he is at some point going to roll his eyes and go, oh, dad, right? Are you ever going to disappoint your son? What lesson do you want to teach your son? Do you want to teach your son that when the Fedi men's father disappoints them, as a Fedi man, when your father disappoints you, do you want to teach them that you should hate them, reject them, and dispose of them? Or do you want to teach them you should love them and forgive them and demand to continue to have a relationship with them? What do you want to teach your son? It's not fair, is it? I mean, it's that AA trickery. It's that spiritual conundrum. It's bullshit. It's not fair. Because I know the answer now. I have to go make amends to my dad for stealing my money. All right? I went back to England to meet my dad. And he was sick. And he was dying. He lived a couple of years beyond this point, but he was sick. And I didn't know what I was going to say to him. I didn't know. But as I sat down to talk to him, God gave me the words. And what I told my dad was, I said to him, Pops, I want you to know I'm grateful that you were my dad. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, I'm grateful that you were my dad because I am very much like you. And you're a great salesman. And you taught me how to sell. And I have the natural gifts and abilities of being your son. And selling has given me a great career. And I own my own business. And my family has lived well above an average standard of living. And that's a gift of being your child. You have a great sense of humor, Dad. Mom, not that funny. It's a gift of being your son. You've provided me that, and you're likable, and people like you, and people like me, and I am who I am because you're my father, and I am grateful for who I am, and I'm grateful that you are my dad. My dad put his head down. He started to cry. When he lifted his head up, he said, "You know, I'm dying." I said, "I know." He said, "I don't know what happens next. I've never been really a religious man. I'm not sure about afterlife." He said, "But if there is such a thing as reincarnation," he said, "I hope I can come back the kind of man that you have become in Alcoholics Anonymous." And I started to cry. And I started to cry because I knew the truth. And the truth is, I wasn't the man he thought I was. This was prayer, sponsor counsel, talking to friends, biting my tongue and doing the best thing I could, regardless of how I felt. But the action that I took was the action of the man that he thought I had become. Primary relationships, I think, are the place where we test our emotional sobriety. My brother and I are very close. We talk at least 4 times a week. It's not always been that way. And often when we talk, not often, but, every couple, 3 weeks, he will say something that will remind me. He's my older brother, and he was a bully when we were kids. He's in AA. He's made amends. I don't say that to disparage him, because I want you to meet my brother. You'll love him. But it will remind me emotionally of him being a bully when we were kids. And I will have to fight to not say anything, not make the snarky remark, to bite my tongue and and allow it to just drift off my back. Primary relationships. My mom, she's very healthy, but her husband of 40 years died a month ago. And I've become not her primary caretaker because she doesn't need one, but I'm there 3 times a week. She's forgotten how to use the computer. Her Social Security that she gets isn't going to cut. I'm going to have to help. I mean, I get to be much more of a hands-on son than I've ever had to be before. And my mom and I have history. Some of it's wonderful. Some of it brings up in me memories of childhood. Right? I wish I was like you. You guys write an inventory, make an amends, say a prayer, and you never have any of that old childhood angst come up and bite you in the ass again, right? You guys are doing real AA. I'm doing this like half-ass Sheldon version, where I'm still tormented often by the memories and the pains of growing up. Things still make me go, oh, right? And I react sometimes. And these primary relationships are where it's at for me, and I'll tell you why. Because I made amends to my high school principal, and I've never seen him since. So he hasn't acted like my high school principal again in my life. So forgiving him was easy. I made amends to my ex-girlfriend, and I haven't slept with her since. So forgiving her was easy. But it's the people in my life that won't go away, right? Brothers, sisters, kids, mom, dad, right? Bosses, if you're a long-term employee at a company. These relationships where they keep being them. Okay, this isn't really a spin, maybe a stretch from Bill's letter, but it's a funny thing that I do. I don't know if you've ever done this, but I screw with the meaning of the word forgiveness, right? Because this is what I think forgiveness should mean. If you wrong me, I will forgive you, which doesn't mean I'll forget what you did, but it means I will treat you with kindness and respect as if you never did the thing you did, providing you never do it again. Providing you never do it again, which isn't forgiveness, right? Forgiveness would be, you are someone who is, your particular set of character defects drove you to behave in this way. I have compassion for you because in your shoes, driven by the things you're driven by, in the light of your experience, you took this behavior, and I'm willing to accept that even I could have done that in your shoes. What I forget is your shoes haven't changed. You're still you. So true forgiveness means I forgive you, not just for the first time you did it, but for next time you do it. I forgive you for the time you haven't done it yet. This is true forgiveness. Isn't that how God forgives me? Isn't that how I hope God forgives me? All right. I hope every time I make a mistake, I don't have to grovel in front of the Lord, hoping that he will wave his magic wand and grant me another chance. But that is the way I treat the people in my life. And the reason that I treat them that way is because I have another strange idea of the definition of the word forgiveness. I think that for me to forgive you, that means that I'm saying your behavior was okay. That if I forgive you, I'm not only condoning, but I'm actually endorsing your behavior. And that's not true either. Because if let's say you did something mean, and then I discovered more facts and it wasn't actually mean, I don't have to forgive you, do I? Because you didn't do nothing wrong. It's only when what you did was in fact wrong, and I'm not condoning the behavior, that it requires forgiveness. And how do I become the guy that forgives you even when you do it again? Well, that's a talk for a different speaker, boy. Right? No, seriously. I mean, I get to do that sometimes. I get to do that in some instances. And the way that I do it is really through step 6. Because isn't compassion, forgiveness, love, tolerance, all these key words that we use in AA, isn't all of that really me just saying that you're flawed and I love you because I'm flawed and I want you to love me? I'm flawed and God loves me. You're flawed and God loves you too. And that we allow each other to be, as the author says, spiritually imperfect, humanly perfect, spiritually imperfect. That the brokenness, Wilson says it himself in the 12 and 12, we are bound by our defects, not our assets. It is, if you, let's be honest, right? If you win the lottery, right? Let's say person A wins the lottery and I'm hanging out with person B. We're going to come up to you and go, hey man, we're really good for you. I'm so glad you won the lottery. And then me and person B are going to walk away and go, prick, right? Because we're not going to be happy for you. We're going to be jealous, right? Let's just face it. Unless you split it with me. And even if you do, you won't give me a big enough piece because you're a miserable son of a bitch, right? I mean, that's how I celebrate your assets, right? But if you come to me and you say, man, I got cancer, I'm going to cry with you. I'm bound to you by your defects, by your faith. Not that cancer's a defect, but by the things that cause you pain. It is in our pain, compassion with pain, with the feeling of pain, that we are bound together. So for me, emotional sobriety is this journey, like I started out with, of becoming human again, of not trying to become emotionally perfectly well balanced and stable, but of accepting I never will be and forgiving you because you never will be either. And our sameness is what binds us. Our sameness in the middle, in the gray muck and mire, in the brokenness of humanity, in the mistakes and the misery and the laughter and the joy and the love, that here we live. Isn't everything we do here about step 6? I mean, it's really all there is in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've come to this thinking lately, and you know what's funny is these things are often recorded, and I'll hear this in 5 years and I'll think, you're an idiot, Sheldon. That's not what it is at all. But my current thinking, right, my current belief of this whole thing is that we take step 1 and what we say is, I am broken to a point where I cannot fix myself. Step 2, I'm going to try and look for a power greater than myself that I can get enough of me out of the way of, that I can become willing to turn my life over to him. Step 6. Then in step 3, I make a formal decision to chase step 6. Step 4, I look at my life of how I lived when I wasn't living, trying to become closer to God in step 6 and 7. Then in step 5, I share with another human being the struggles that I had without trying to live in 6 and 7. 8 and 9, I look at and clean up the mess I made by not living a life based on step 6. 10 and 11, I check my pulse to make sure I'm still living in 6 and to make sure that I understand I'll never be perfect and to remember it all goes into God's hands. And 10 and 11 drive me into 6. And in step 12, as the poet says, I'm trying to find a man whose hand I can put on the door that only his touch will open, the door to God, the door to step 6 and 7. So everything we do in AA is about our broken, imperfect, knuckleheaded insecurity, trying to live together and love one another without, progress, not perfection. No one among us has ever been able to maintain. Wilson says it over and over again. Sheldon, you're a knucklehead. Find some knuckleheads you can love, laugh about your knuckleheadedness, and try to be less of a knucklehead. And when you get stuck and you can't possibly quit being a knucklehead, call me. I'll come down and I will keep you a knucklehead, but I'll take away a little bit more of the knuckleheadedness, because that's the whole game, right? How can I learn to live with you until I learn to live with me? My broken imperfection. Don't you wish God would just take it away? Don't you wish, like, God's God, right? I'm going to end with this. God's God. You would think I should be able to go to God and say, God, make me perfect. And God's God, and he loves me. You told me he loves me. He should just, Sheldon, you're perfect. They're going to build statues of you outside at first step halls. You are now Mr. Wonderful. And I almost want to, like, hey, Pops, what the hell? Until I really look at my life. It is in my failing. It is in the realizations of 4 and 5, 10 and 11 that drive me into 6. The recognition of my brokenness that does what? It pushes me towards God. If I was rendered perfect tomorrow, the first thing I'd do is quit praying. Why would I need to? I'm perfect now. I mean, maybe you guys have found a love of God that's so powerful, you'd be drawn to him in your wonderfulness. But I ain't that guy, right? When do I do more 10 steps? When I'm in trouble. You get me on a roll of happy times and I'll quit scribbling in a heartbeat, baby. I just will. Some of you guys do it no matter what. I ain't that guy. I call my sponsor in a mess and he goes, well, what did you discover in step 11? I'm like, okay, I'll do it tomorrow. I promise. All right, I will. I do. Right. So it is in my brokenness that God gives me the greatest gift of being driven to you and through you to him. So perhaps a guy like me can find a little peace. I should probably think more before I talk. I don't. I just ramble. I hope my rambling inspired someone. I hope it entertained most of you, and I hope it didn't upset too many of you. But thank you so much for the invite, and thank you for letting me come and hang out with you guys tonight.
Thank you for sharing with us, Sheldon. It's kind of a tradition in this group that the person who shares calls on some people for a few people at the beginning.
I noticed that my buddy Danny has joined us all the way from Indo, so I'm gonna call on him first.
Hi, I'm Danny, alcoholic. Really happy to be here. Let's see, what was it? Two Fridays ago, I was in Las Vegas and hanging with you, and now I'm at my office, supposed to be in quarantine here in Indonesia, looking out at the ocean, volcanoes, and then I think, oh, life doesn't treat me well sometimes. If any of you want a good time, go to Vegas, hang out with Sheldon and his buddies. He'll take you to some great meetings every day, a different car. And it's just his generosity of spirit is enormous. And we have a number in common. 157, right, Sheldon? But that's another story.
87, Danny.
Gosh.
187.
Gosh, you said so many great things. Early in COVID, I just hit a wall early in COVID, and a close friend of mine in the program in Jakarta said to me, and you get to a point where the person 10 stepping with is a person that loves me, and I can hear it. And he said, Danny, you're either black or white. There's not much gray in your life. And I just really appreciated what you had to say, because it encapsulates my journey the last couple of years of trying to get in the middle, trying to not take myself so darn seriously. We spoke a little bit about it when in Vegas, but in Denver, I made amends to my sister-in-law and my brother-in-law, my wife's sister and her husband. They never saw me drunk. It had nothing to do with drinking. But what came out of it was how much they loved me. And I'm like, geez, wow, it's really true. And I want to create this narrative. You shared about that at your home group and on the Thursday night meeting in Vegas, this narrative that you had built around your mother, and how that was broken down, how it breaks down. It breaks down by us doing this work. It breaks down by us continually wanting to I think for me, continually knowing that this narrative is messed up, and what can I do about it? Be led by God in prayer to make a difficult amends. And that gets me more into the middle, gets me more into, learning to live with myself, that I am flawed and it's okay. And I can go back to prayer. And what a heck of a deal I've got this 10th step and this 11th step that, like you, I work in perfectly. When I was traveling like that, not around a lot of people that are in my blood family and so forth. So it's easy to get off track. And then wham, getting into Denver and, seeing my sister and my brother, and like what you were talking about, these things from the past come up. And thankfully at this point, I could just look at them and just with love. It was funny. My sister and I, we drove from Denver down to Santa Fe for Thanksgiving over at my cousin's place. And we cleared up something she thought I had done years ago. And it had to do with my dad, had to do with our father. And I said, why didn't you bring that up when during the amends process? And she's in the program too. She made them. And she said, I just forgot. And we laughed about it. And we cleared stuff up, and we become closer and more loving. So in the brokenness, I find God. In the imperfection, I find God. That is, man, for me, exactly the same. So, hey, man, great to see you. And thanks for letting me keep my stuff at your shop. And I'll make it up when you come and visit. That's for darn sure. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Have a great day. Have a great evening for your side.
Thanks, Danny. I don't know a lot of the ladies on here, so I'm just going to call on. How about Susan D?
Hi, my name is Susan. I'm an alcoholic. It's wonderful to be on this meeting. This is my first time with you guys. I'm out in New York, and my friend Sarah had told me about this meeting. And wow, emotional sobriety is the holy grail. And for me, if I can, and it's wonderful to hear this article. I've never read it before. And just to hear it read was fascinating. And Sheldon, that was an amazing share. You said an awful lot of stuff that that I really appreciated. I think for me, the thing is just keep putting one foot in front of the other. And as my sponsor reminds me occasionally, Susan, where are your feet? You're right where you're supposed to be. And right where I'm supposed to be at any given moment can be super scary, painful, difficult, and incredibly uncomfortable. I just went through a very tumultuous experience with my 20-year-old twins, plus an additional emerging adult, all under the same roof. And I could not have handled this situation if I did not have you guys and have AA as a safety net, so that I can go out and have these learning experiences that higher power gives me an opportunity to go through. And at the time that I'm going through something really difficult, I now have enough sober references to trust that even though I'm grieving, even though I'm scared, even though I'm anxious, even if there's an enormous amount of that acronym for fear, false events appearing real, I have a faith, and thank you all for just picking up on, and Sheldon, for you talking about it. It is in the brokenness that I really do the work. You know, we're human. And so I feel like listening to all of you tonight is giving me just a sense of self-acceptance and safety and serenity that I only get at a meeting. And I really needed that tonight. So thanks so much for calling on me. Thank you.
Thanks. How about Gary B?
Thanks, Sheldon. I appreciate that. I guess I was stunned by so many of the things that you said that I've never had the nerve to bring up in my life. I didn't want you to know me that well. There's a few other people in here I've known for a long time, and glad to hear it. I think lately in my life, you know, I find myself getting older and acting older and stupider sometimes. And I'm just kind of glad to get to this meeting and to my home group meeting and those things, and just kind of sit and be there. And I'm not really doing a hell of a lot other than being there and trying to help when I get a chance. But gosh, I'm stunned. That was a great talk, Sheldon. I really liked it. Thank you very much.
How about Monique S. from Jacksonville?
Hi, my name is Monique and I'm an alcoholic, and thank you, Sheldon, for your talk. I always read this. I haven't read this lately, The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety. And, you know, I always thought it had to do with the absolute dependency of other people, you know, me dependent on other people. I was the youngest of 5, and you know, I depended on everybody else to feed me information about myself and you know, to not live the life that they had lived or make the mistakes that they had made. And I ended up doing that. And you know, there's another part in here, not just always about the absolute dependency, but what happens when we have that absolute dependency and where it takes us, and how we have feelings of self-rejection and frustration when we start, you know, dependent on others and dependent on other situations, you know, to bring us, you know, whatever it is that we're looking for. And for me, it's always comes back to the love, the unconditional love of my higher power. When I first got into Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought this was going to be a destination. I thought the 12 steps were going to be a destination in which I learned a lot about the disease of alcoholism. But then you are going to just pat me on my back and tell me everything's going to be all right and you're going to live a really good life. But the destination, as I stayed in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous for the past 26 years, is learning more about myself in conjunction or being a part of the love that I have for you. And I always wanted to be by myself. I always was a true isolator. And the more I learned about myself, the more I opened myself up to you. And that became the connection of being with my higher power and learning more about my higher power, because he was always on the outside of me. And this was a really good reading, and Sheldon, you really knocked it out of the park. And I'm so grateful that I stumbled upon this group, and I hope to be back. Thank you. Thanks for letting me share.
How about Chris Schroeder?
Hi, everybody. My name's Chris. I'm an alcoholic. That was such a great, insightful talk. And I also agree, Bill Wilson's always been very open and very, very honest about his own failings. And that's really made me a big fan of his. And if he was the type of person who, acted like he was the best thing around, I probably wouldn't as much, but I'm a huge fan. And I read into the text, the next frontier. I really think Bill started to think about this emotional sobriety in late 40s, early 50s. And then the letter, later on in the 50s, and that's like 15 to 25 years sober. That's like right on time as far as my own personal experience is, that, dealing with my own emotional health and well-being, so he's going through kind of the same thing. And it really sounds to me like he expected there would be this movement in Alcoholics Anonymous where everybody starts talking about emotional sobriety. It's going to be the next frontier. And where I'm seeing that, I'm not seeing that in my local meetings. I'm seeing that on Zooms like this, like a talk today. I get so much from it. Sheldon, thank you so much.
Sheldon, I'd like to call on Lou. It's a special day for him.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate it. Sheldon, what an amazing talk. As others have said, you spoke directly to my heart. I too have suffered from that peculiar strain of COVID, the alcoholic COVID, and it's hard sometimes not to take all of that personally, but it's just been an amazing journey. Something you said early in your talk gave me a new insight. I've been worried a little bit about this kind of self-deprecating humor that we get into a bit, and that I love that phrase that you offered, that self-awareness without a sense of humor is depression. That's been my experience. It's a way out of that. It's not a way of necessarily circumventing anything other than just telling the truth. And I did want to get to this meeting particularly tonight. First of all, because I'm convinced that you guys do the real AA, and I want to hear that. I want to be inspired by that. I want to be taken to that. And it's been a blessing of the last period of my life. So I just want to thank this group. This has sort of been, I can't get to this group often based on life circumstances, but it has been an absolute anchor in this time of COVID and this time of whatever. So I just want to especially thank Sam and Chris and Don and the people that have kept this workshop going. And I know it's not always easy to have a service like this to a community where you've got to find special speakers like Sheldon, week after week, and it's been as I say, I can't get here as often as I'd like, but it's been an absolute anchor for me, and that's particularly important to me today because December 2nd, 1983 is my sobriety date. It's just been absolute amazing to me throughout that 39-year journey that I have been able to find always when I've needed it. It's been a workshop, a meeting, a group of folks, an inspiring encouragement, again, as Sheldon shared, some knucklehead to be willing to get together with this knucklehead and kind of work it out and improve our knuckleheadery enough for the day to get past whatever it comes along through the whether it's I stubbed my toe or a dark night of the soul. I've experienced both in the last 39 years of this experience, and it's just been an absolute blessing to be able to be here and be with you all. So thank you, and God bless us all.
Thank you, Lou. Hey, Sheldon, I have we kind of have a bit of a tradition here, and you touched on some of the stuff that you're in favor of reading. The spirituality of imperfection you referenced a few times. Is there anything else that's of special interest to you that you'd like to share about?
I wish that I were a voracious reader. I have friends that read 7 books in the morning before their coffee, and if they're telling the truth, I'm jealous of them. But there's one other book that I read that our friend Bob Bazant's, when I went through my divorce, it was the dark night of the soul, it was the dark 6 months of the soul. And he recommended Richard Rohr's Falling Upward. And that book was very powerful for me. But other than that, don't know. I'd like to ask you to call on folks from this point on, if you don't mind.
Thank you for sharing, Sheldon. I'm sure you'll just kind of dip out. We appreciate you. I'm going to call on Susan from St. Pete.
Hi, thanks, Dawn. I'm Susan. I'm an alcoholic. Sheldon, that was really incredible. I loved everything you said. I was particularly moved by the conversation you had with your dad and the way that you dealt with your dad and also dealt with your son, and how the systemic nature of this disease transfers from generation to generation unless we stop it and unless we unless we make a change. And how you said that it's not about your father that's going to be feeling it, but it's you that's going to be feeling it, and it's going to be your child that's going to be feeling it, and how it's not just about the couple of years that your dad is going to be around, but the 20 years you're going to be around, or 30, and the 60 years your kid is going to be around. And I see that also very much in my family and in my line of making a decision to forgive. And I also love when you talked about forgiveness, because it's like, it's one thing to be able to forgive in the moment for the thing the person did, but what about the thing they're going to do tomorrow? I love when you said that. It's like, can I forgive for tomorrow's mistakes today, and know that I'm clear in that? And it is the spirituality of imperfection. This whole thing is about it's, for me, it's just about this continual realization and awakening of the brokenness that is going on inside of my soul because of the disease of alcoholism and other wounded sides of myself, and the ability to be able to live in the now with it, and be able to also to have community, to have people like this. It is so important for for me in particular, and for all of us, I think, to have a place to go where we can say, we're not alone with this craziness. We're all, we're all a bunch of loonies. We really are. And we're all just trying to get better one day at a time. And, if I stay stuck in my head, I'm in a pretty bad neighborhood because I'm thinking, you know, this is all about me and what's wrong with me and why can't I get God the way you get God, and why can't I have this the way other people have it, and why are people more connected to each other than I am? But at the end of the day, you know, we're all thinking the same crazy. We are, and I think having each other to, you know, to bounce that off of, whether it be a one-on-one or whether it be in a community like this, is just beautiful. You know, I myself am very happy to have found this meeting too, and it's good to see everybody. Thanks for calling on me, Dawn.
Thank you for sharing. David H., Toronto.
Hey everyone, Dave, alcoholic. Wasn't expecting to get called on here, but I'm happy to be here. I love this meeting. Whoever puts on this meeting, I came the first time maybe 8-10 weeks ago or so, and I've tried to be here often. Yeah, it's just I know Sheldon's not here anymore, so I can't thank him. But yeah, I was actually I listened to his talk as I was driving back from I was at a late friend's mother's house, and I was complaining to them about my brother. So when he talked about it, he said, some of you have been telling other people about complaining about your relationships. I was like, I was just doing that. Although in fairness to myself, there was a little bit of humor with it. I wasn't, though I have many times, this particular time I wasn't really riled up with, the anger that I have in the past. But anyways, just really appreciate this meeting, and yeah, it's right kind of where I'm at right now, and love the letter. I also like because mentioned that he talks about the future lover, where the love affair with the sponsee or future romantic interest, whatever the language is. Yeah, that kind of something to watch for. Anyways, yeah, thanks. Hope everyone has a good 24 and happy to be here.
I like the fact that everybody kind of keys in on that phrase. And if you go Googling around on the internet, you won't find that version. And we stick to that version to keep the humor rolling, I think, don't we, Sam? Apparently the Grapevine didn't feel that was something they should publish. Judy, I'm going to call on you.
Hi, everybody. Judy Lavezzi, alcoholic. Thank you, Dawn. And thanks to the universe for bringing Sheldon. I love listening to Sheldon. I always hear him so clearly, and it makes such a difference because he doesn't pull any of his punches. He's very clear, and he says things that some of us don't say very often anyway. So he also says something that I think is really powerful. And I was wondering, kind of as he was talking, probably the shortest step in the big book is the 6th step. It's like what, 2-3 sentences. And of all of them, it's probably the biggest thread in the tapestry of a sober life. The most enduringly ongoing, interesting part of what we get to do is to look at how those parts of our character that have been thwarted or bent or changed in some mysterious way come back and then regrow and come back. And throughout our sober life, it's not like I've ever done 1 4th step through 9th step and had my stuff be changed magically and I'm a wonderful person now forever and ever, amen. What has happened has been absolutely different than that. And that I find that I have some defaults that I go to that are Judy's character defects, and they're darker in a way, and they're deep, and they're not even my behaviors, but those are the things that permit me the excuse and the permission for my behaviors. So, and I look at those broken instincts Bill talks about in the 6th step, and I find that that I still go back to them no matter how long I'm sober. Those are the things that I go back to. And yet at least, and I want to say this for anybody who's fairly new, the beauty is that they no longer drive the bus. They're kind of the defaults that I go back to, but they don't drive all of my behaviors anymore. They don't change how I work my program, but they're there. They're like automatically what I go back to and want to create as a new way of thinking. So I really appreciate that he sees that 6th and 7th step to be like, we dance all around it and then we come back to it and then we go around it and then we come back to it. And then changed, we go out and face life and we fling ourselves at life and life changes us and we bring that back to the program. Other people change us and we bring that changed person and we come back and we use the program to look at that kind of stuff and allow the program to change us before it flings us back out into life again, to get those rough edges one more time, get sanded off by the process of life, and God gets to be the restoring agent. So I love the talk, and I love the sense that we get to focus on that 6th step, even though, again, it's the smallest of mentions in our big book. It seems to be one of the most enduring threads we have. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Judy. If y'all hadn't noticed, both Sheldon and Tim have gone. There was something I jotted down as the meeting was going on, which was a much more important demonstration of our principles lies before me in my home, occupation, and affairs, and that's what I heard and share. Sam, I'm going to ask you to do the closing remarks because I just love the way you close.
Well, hey everybody, my name's Sam. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Sam.
And you know, for all of you who have hung on for the last 10 minutes of the emotional sobriety workshop, much love. Thank you. You know, when we started this a couple of years ago, it was just meant to be for a couple months. You know, we got one speaker and we got another speaker. I think we got Gary and then Kurt and then Mary Thayer. And then all these people started coming on, and this place is really, this community of people have really been close to my heart, you know, and in the spirit of rotation, you know, I thought it was funny. The other day I was watching a couple speakers. I was kind of getting this ache in my soul over a month or two. And I was getting this thing where we got a speaker that, you know, you can usually tell when everybody's not super entertained, when about, you know, 12 of the people that you're watching to see their reactions start to pop off and go to, you know, to leave. And I was thinking, I started to take that personally, and I realized I was running a meeting about emotional dependencies, you know, and dependency for approval and all this stuff. And I was worried about what the people thought about my meeting. And I was like, geez, man, what the hell's wrong with you, man? Anyway, in the spirit of rotation, I turn this over to Don and keep it going for as long as it works for everybody. And but I can't tell you what a privilege it is to see everyone here and how much all of you mean to my heart. And when nobody even has to talk, you know, I just like to see people's faces on here every week. And the way that we usually do this, thank you for allowing me to serve. And the way that we do this is we mute ourselves and we go to our inner room and recite the Lord's Prayer there. So for all who care to join. Amen. Thank you, everybody.
Nice.
Thank you, Don. And if you haven't seen in the chat box, we've got Chris uploaded the link to the Dropbox. It's got all our recordings. We've got some really cool recordings on here.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Don.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Don. Thanks,
Good
Sam.
to see your
See you
face.